What if I told you that waiting for capital is the biggest lie keeping you poor? Right now, while you're watching this video, someone with $0 in their bank account is building more wealth than someone with 100,000 sitting idle. This isn't motivational fluff. This is the harsh economic reality that separates those who break through from those who stay stuck. You see, we've been conditioned to believe a fairy tale. Save money first, then invest, then build wealth. But here's what nobody tells you. By the time you've saved enough capital, you've already missed the 10 investments that would have made capital irrelevant. The wealthiest people I've studied didn't wait for money to fall from the sky. They invested in assets that cost nothing but created everything. In the next hour, I'm going to walk you through the exact 10 investments from the groundbreaking framework, Don't Wait for Capital. Invest in these 10 things first. These aren't the typical self-help platitudes you've heard before. Each chapter we cover will give you a 1,000-word deep dive into actionable strategies that you can implement today. Yes, today, with absolutely zero capital required. But here's my challenge to you. If you find even one idea in this video that could change your financial trajectory, hit that like button. Why? Because YouTube's algorithm needs to know this information matters. Every like tells the platform to show this to someone else who's stuck in the capital waiting trap. You're not just supporting the channel, you're literally helping someone else discover what took me years to learn. And if you want the complete roadmap to financial independence without waiting for money you don't have, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're just getting started. Now, let's destroy the myth that you need money to make money. Chapter 1. Invest in your skill. Stack. The compound interest of human capital. Let me start with a story that will fundamentally change how you think about investment. In 2008, during the financial crisis, two people lost their jobs on the same day at the same company. Person A had $50,000 in savings. Person B had $500 and a skill stack they'd been building for 3 years. Fast forward to 2012, Person A's savings had dwindled to $12,000 after bills and emergency expenses. Person B was running a 6-figure consulting business. What made the difference? Person B understood the first principle of capital-free wealth building. Your skill stack is the highest return investment you'll ever make, and it costs you nothing but intentional time. Let's break down exactly what a skill stack is and why it's more valuable than any stock portfolio, real estate investment, or cryptocurrency gamble. A skill stack isn't about becoming world-class at one thing. That's the old model, and frankly, it's obsolete in our rapidly changing economy. Instead, a skill stack is the strategic combination of complementary skills that make you uniquely valuable in the marketplace. Think of it like chemical compounds. Hydrogen alone is flammable, oxygen alone sustains fire, but together they create water, something entirely different and essential. Here's the economic principle at work. In traditional capital markets, you're limited by the law of diminishing returns. Put $10,000 into an index fund and you might get a 7% annual return. $700. That's linear growth, capped by the capital you can deploy. But invest 100 hours into building a skill stack, say copywriting plus basic data analytics plus video editing, and you've created a combination that might command $50 per hour initially. That's $5,000 from your 100-hour investment, a $50 per hour return. But here's where it gets exponential. Those skills compound. Next year, with practice and projects, that same skill stack might command $75 per hour, then $100. Then you're not selling hours anymore. You're selling results, projects, or launching your own products. The mathematics of skill stacking is the mathematics of capital accumulation for the simple reason that human capital appreciates while financial capital depreciates through inflation and taxation. Your skills can't be inflated away by central bank policy, they can't be taxed till you deploy them, and they can't be taken from you by market crashes or bad investments. So how do you actually build a skill stack without capital? This is where intentionality replaces investment dollars. First, you need to understand the three-layer framework: foundation skills, bridge skills, and multiplier skills. Foundation skills are the basics in your chosen field. If you're interested in digital marketing, this means understanding customer psychology, basic copywriting, and how online platforms work. You don't need a $40,000 degree for this. You need YouTube, free online courses, library books, and most importantly, free projects where you apply what you're learning. Here's a specific roadmap I've seen work dozens of times. Identify one person or small business in your network who needs help but can't afford to pay much or anything. Offer to solve a real problem for them for free in exchange for a testimonial, feedback, and the learning experience. Let's say you want to build skills in social media marketing. Find a local restaurant owner struggling with Instagram. Spend 20 hours over a month creating content, learning scheduling tools, studying analytics, and testing different post types. You've now invested 20 hours and $0, but you've gained practical experience, a case study, and you've started building your foundation skills. But foundation skills alone won't create wealth. They'll just make you a competent beginner. This is where bridge skills come in. Bridge skills connect your foundation to economic opportunity. For social media marketing, bridge skills might include basic graphic design using free tools like Canva, understanding Facebook Ads Manager without spending mud by studying successful campaigns, or learning how to write compelling captions that drive engagement. Each bridge skill multiplies the value of your foundation skills. A marketer who can also design is worth more than a marketer who needs to outsource design. A marketer who understands paid advertising strategy is worth more than one who only knows organic content. The third layer is multiplier skills. These are the meta skills that amplify everything else. Communication and persuasion, project management, basic understanding of business finance, the ability to teach others what you know. These skills turn you from a technician into a strategist, from an employee into an entrepreneur. And here's the beautiful part. Every single one of these skills can be developed through free resources and real-world practice. Let me give you the brutal truth that most gurus won't tell you. Building a valuable skill stack takes between 300 and 1,000 hours of focused, deliberate practice. That sounds like a lot. But let's do the math. If you invest 2 hours per day, just 2 hours that you're probably currently spending on social media scrolling, Netflix, or other consumption, you'll hit 300 hours in 5 months, 700 hours in a year. During that same year, how much capital could you realistically save? For most people, maybe a few $1,000s if they're aggressive and disciplined. But a well-constructed skill stack built over a year could be generating you to $10,000 per month within 18 months of starting. The strategy for rapid skill stack development follows what I call the project-based learning acceleration method. Instead of learning in a vacuum, you learn by doing real projects with real constraints. Here's how it works. Week 1, you consume content, courses, videos, articles about your chosen skill. Week 2, you attempt your first terrible project. Week 3, you get feedback and iterate. Week 4, you start a slightly more ambitious project. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to build volume and velocity. Every project teaches you more than 10 hours of passive learning ever could. Now, let's talk about the economic moat this creates. When you have a skill stack instead of a single skill, you become difficult to compete with and almost impossible to replace. Imagine you're hiring. Candidate A is an excellent writer. Candidate B is a good writer who also understands SEO, can edit video, and has basic WordPress skills. Who's more valuable? Who can command a higher rate? Who's more likely to get hired for the project? Candidate B every time. And here's the secret. Candidate B isn't necessarily more talented than Candidate A. They just invested their time more strategically. The most powerful aspect of skill stack investing is that it's immune to economic downturns. In recessions, capital investments crash, real estate values plummet, stock portfolios lose 40%, but skills become more valuable because companies need to do more with less, and people with diverse skill stacks can wear multiple hats. I watched this play out during COVID-19. People with single skills struggled to find work, but people with skill stacks pivoted quickly and often increased their income because they could solve multiple problems for desperate businesses. Here's your action plan for the next 90 days requiring zero capital. First, identify 3 skills that naturally complement each other in your area of interest. If you're unsure what area to focus on, choose the intersection of what you're curious about, what the market values, and what you're willing to practice for hundreds of hours. Second, allocate 7 hours per week minimum to skill development. 5 hours of learning and practicing, 2 hours of doing real projects. Third, document your learning journey publicly on a free platform like LinkedIn, Twitter, or Medium. This serves triple duty. It forces you to learn more deeply by teaching, it builds your personal brand, and it creates evidence of your growing expertise. Fourth, every month, raise your rates or go after a slightly bigger opportunity. Don't wait until you feel ready. You'll never feel ready. The market will tell you when you're charging too much, and I guarantee you'll be surprised how much value people place on skill combinations they don't possess. Fifth, add 1 new complementary skill every 6 months. Your first year might be copywriting, basic analytics, and email marketing. Your second year, you add conversion rate optimization or paid advertising. By year 3, you have 6 interconnected skills that make you a force in your market. The biggest mental shift required here is understanding that you're not building skills to get a job. You're building skills to create economic value independent of employment. Job security is dead. Skill security is the new paradigm. Companies will downsize, industries will be disrupted, but someone with a robust skill stack can generate income in dozens of different ways. Freelancing, consulting, creating digital products, starting service businesses, collaborating on projects, or even pivoting to entirely new industries quickly. Let me address the elephant in the room. But won't AI replace all these skills? This question misunderstands both AI and human value creation. AI is a tool that makes skill stacks more powerful, not obsolete. Someone who understands copywriting and learns to use AI writing tools becomes 10 times more productive. Someone who never builds the underlying skill just produces mediocre, AI-generated content that everyone else can also produce. Your skill stack becomes about judgment, strategy, creativity, and implementation, all things AI assists but doesn't replace. The final piece of the skill stack investment is understanding leverage. As your skills compound, you gain 3 types of leverage. Labor leverage, you can charge more per hour. Product leverage, you can create digital products that sell while you sleep. And teaching leverage, you can teach others what you've learned, creating another income stream. A person who waits for capital might eventually hire someone with skills. A person who builds skills first can build a business, create products, and generate capital that they then deploy strategically. Before we move to Chapter 2, I want you to viscerally understand this. Every day you wait to start building your skill stack is a day you've chosen capital poverty over skill wealth. Time is passing whether you're learning or not. The question isn't whether you have time, you have the same 24 hours as everyone else. The question is whether you're investing those hours in appreciating assets or wasting them on consumption. Starting today, you're no longer someone who needs capital to invest. You're someone who has the ultimate investment vehicle, your own capacity to learn, adapt, and create value. Chapter 2. Invest in your network. Architecture. Building social capital that prints opportunity. Here's a truth that will make you uncomfortable. Right now, someone less skilled than you is making more money, getting better opportunities, and living a more fulfilled life. Why? Because while you were focused on building competence in isolation, they were building a network that multiplies everything they touch. This isn't about unfairness or politics. This is about understanding the single most undervalued investment available to people with zero capital: strategic relationship building. Let me start by destroying a myth that keeps people poor. The idea that networking is sleazy, transactional, or only for extroverts who love small talk. This misconception has cost millions of talented people billions of dollars in lost opportunity. Real network building has nothing to do with collecting business cards at conferences or adding random people on LinkedIn. True network architecture is about deliberately constructing a web of relationships that create compound value for everyone involved, and it requires $0 but significant intentionality. The economic principle underlying network value is called Metcalfe's law. Originally applied to telecommunications, but perfectly applicable to human relationships. The law states that the value of a network is proportional to the square of the number of connected users. In simple terms, a network of 2 people has minimal value. A network of 10 people has exponentially more value. A network of 100 people becomes extraordinarily valuable because the potential connections aren't just 100, they're nearly 5,000 possible relationships between those people. But here's what most people miss. It's not about the size of your network, it's about the architecture, the quality of connections, and your position within multiple networks. Let me explain what I mean by network architecture through a concrete comparison. Person A knows 500 people superficially. They have met them at events, connected on social media, maybe exchanged pleasantries. They have what I call a wide, shallow network. Person B knows 50 people deeply. They understand what these people value, what problems they're solving, what they're building, and they've provided genuine value to these relationships over time. Person B has what I call a narrow, deep network. In almost every economic scenario, Person B will outperform Person A dramatically. Why? Because weak ties might occasionally surface opportunities, but strong ties actually make things happen. Person B can send a message and get responses, introductions, advice, partnerships, and opportunity that Person A could never access despite knowing 10 times as many people. Now let's talk about the practical zero capital strategy for building network architecture that creates wealth. The first principle is what I call value-first relationship building. This is the complete opposite of what most people do when they're trying to network. Most people approach networking with a scarcity mindset. What can I get from this person? Can they hire me, introduce me to someone, give me advice? This energy is palpable and repulsive. People can sense when you're taking rather than giving, and they avoid you. The value-first approach flips this entirely. You approach every potential relationship asking, what can I offer this person that costs me little, but provides them value? Here's a specific example of how this works in practice. Let's say you're trying to build relationships with people in the content creation space because you want to eventually launch your own digital products. The scarcity approach would be sending messages like, "Hey, I love your work. Can we jump on a call so I can pick your brain?" This person gets 50 messages like this per week. They'll ignore yours. The value-first approach looks completely different. You spend 30 minutes watching their content, identifying a specific problem they mentioned or a question their audience asked. Then you record a 5-minute video solving that problem with detail and generosity. Or you write a thoughtful analysis. Or you create a resource that directly addresses their audience's question. You send it with a simple message. "I noticed you and your audience were discussing this topic. I put together some thoughts that might be helpful. No response needed, just wanted to contribute." What happens next is predictable human psychology. First, you've stood out from the 99 other people who wanted to take from them. Second, you've demonstrated competence and generosity simultaneously. Third, you've created what Robert Cialdini calls the reciprocity principle. Humans are psychologically wired to want to reciprocate when someone provides value. You haven't asked for anything, but you've planted a seed. Now, when you later reach out with a genuine question, or when an opportunity arises where you could collaborate, you're not a stranger asking for favors. You're someone who's already proven their value. The mathematics of this approach are stunning. If you do this with one person per week, just one, investing 30 to 60 minutes of focused effort providing value, you've initiated 52 high-quality relationship seeds in a year. Even if only 20% of those develop into genuine relationships. You now have 10 strong connections with people who know your work, appreciate your generosity, and are predisposed to help when you need it. Compare this to attending networking events where you collect 200 business cards from people who barely remember your name. Which approach creates more actual opportunity? Let me introduce you to the concept of network positioning, which is about being strategically located in multiple networks rather than just having a large network. Imagine 3 circles representing different professional communities. Let's say freelance writers, startup founders, and podcast producers. Most people exist entirely within one circle. They know other writers, or other founders, or other producers. But if you can position yourself at the intersection of 2 or 3 circles, you become what network scientists call a bridge node. You're the person who can connect a startup founder who needs content with a writer who needs clients, or a podcast producer who wants startup guests with founders who want exposure. Bridge nodes don't just participate in networks, they create value by connecting networks, and they're compensated accordingly. How do you become a bridge node with 0 capital? Simple but not easy. You deliberately invest time in developing relationships across different domains of interest. If you're a writer, you don't just hang out with other writers, you also engage with the communities that need writing. You join startup communities, you participate in marketing forums, you engage with coaches and consultants who need content. Each community you authentically participate in gives you access to different opportunities, different perspectives, and different potential collaborations. When you can say, I know someone who could help with that, you become invaluable. When you can say it across multiple domains, you become irreplaceable. Now let's discuss the platform strategy for network building in the modern economy. You have unprecedented access to build relationships with anyone in the world through digital platforms, yet most people waste this opportunity by being passive consumers rather than active contributors. The platform strategy is straightforward. Choose 1 or 2 platforms where your ideal network congregates, then commit to being genuinely helpful in public for an extended period. Notice I said genuinely helpful, not promotional or posting for engagement. There's a massive difference. Here's how this plays out practically. Let's say you choose Twitter and LinkedIn as your platforms because people in your target industries are active there. Your strategy for the next 6 months is simple. Every single day you're going to provide value in public. You're going to answer questions people ask in your area of expertise. You're going to share insights from what you're learning. You're going to highlight other people's good work. You're going to start conversations about industry trends. You're going to be consistently present and consistently valuable. This costs you $0 and maybe 30 to 60 minutes per day. What happens over 6 months is remarkable. First, people start recognizing your name and associating it with helpful insights. Second, some of these people start engaging with your content. Third, some of those people start direct messaging you to continue conversations. Fourth, some of those conversations turn into professional relationships, collaborations, or opportunities. I've seen this pattern repeat hundreds of times. Someone commits to public generosity on a platform for 6 to 12 months, and their entire professional trajectory changes. They didn't pay for ads, they didn't buy followers, they didn't use growth hacks, they just showed up consistently and helped people. But here's where most people fail with the platform strategy. They give up after 3 weeks because they are not getting immediate results. They post valuable content and get 3 likes and no comments, and they conclude it's not working. This is like planting a seed, checking 3 days later, seeing no tree, and deciding gardening doesn't work. Network building through consistent public value creation is a compound interest game. The first month, almost nothing happens. The second month, a little momentum. By month 6, you have genuine relationships forming. By month 12, opportunities are finding you rather than you hunting for them. Let me share a critical concept called network maintenance that separates people who build lasting social capital from people whose networks decay. Building relationships is one thing, maintaining them is another. Most people are great at the initial connection but terrible at maintenance. They meet someone, have a great conversation, connect digitally, then never interact again until they need something years later. This is network decay, and it destroys the value you work to create. Network maintenance doesn't require much. It requires consistency and genuine interest. A simple system. Every week, reach out to 3 people in your network with no agenda except maintaining the relationship. Share an article they'd find interesting. Comment thoughtfully on their recent work. Ask how a project they mentioned is going. Congratulate them on a win. Introduce them to someone they should know. These micro-interactions take 5 minutes each, 15 minutes per week total, but they keep relationships warm and active. Over a year, you've had meaningful touch points with 150 people in your network. When opportunity arises or when you need a help, these aren't cold contacts, they're warm relationships. Now, I want to address a crucial element that makes or breaks network value: your reputation architecture. This is the invisible infrastructure that determines whether people want to connect with you in the first place and whether they recommend you to others. Your reputation is built through 3 consistent behaviors: delivering on promises, being generous without keeping score, and maintaining integrity even when it's inconvenient. Delivering on promises sounds basic, but it's shockingly rare. If you say you'll send something, send it. If you commit to a deadline, hit it. If you can't do something, say so upfront rather than over-promising and under-delivering. Every kept promise is a deposit in your reputation account. Every broken promise is a withdrawal. Most people make withdrawals constantly without realizing it, then wonder why their network doesn't produce opportunities. Being generous without keeping score means you give value, make introduction, share opportunities, and help people without mentally tallying who owes you what. The people who track every favor and expect equivalent returns are exhausting to be around, and their networks stay small. The people who give freely find that value returns to them multiplied, often from unexpected sources. This isn't mystical, it's mathematical. When you help 10 people genuinely and each of them helps one other person mentioning you helped them, your reputation spreads geometrically. Maintaining integrity when it's inconvenient is the ultimate reputation builder. Anyone can be honest when it's easy. The person who admits a mistake that they could have hidden, who turns down an opportunity that doesn't align with their values, who tells a hard truth when a comfortable lie would work. That person builds a reputation for integrity that becomes their most valuable asset. People want to work with, invest in, and recommend people they trust completely. Let me give you a specific 90-day network architecture plan that requires zero capital. Week 1 through 4, you're going to identify 20 people who are 1 to 2 steps ahead of you professionally. Not celebrities or unreachable people, but individuals who are where you want to be in 2 years. You're going to study their work, understand their challenges, and identify how you could provide value. Week 5 through 8, you're going to reach out to 5 of these people per week with specific customized value, a resource, an insight, a connection, a solution to a problem they've mentioned. You're asking for nothing in return. Week 9 through 12, you're going to commit to daily platform presence, sharing one valuable insight or helping one person publicly every day. You're also going to reach out to 3 people in your existing network each week, just to maintain relationships. By day 90, you've initiated 20 high-quality relationship-building attempts, you've maintained relationships with 36 existing contacts, you've been publicly helpful 90 times, and you've started building recognition in your industry. The ROI on this 90-day investment of time is typically 5 to 10 times higher than any financial investment you could make with the small amount of capital most people have saved. The compound effect of network architecture becomes clearer the longer you practice it. In year 1, you might generate a few freelance opportunities or collaborations through your network. In year 2, you're getting introduced to higher level opportunities because people in your network trust you and want to connect you with their networks. In year 3, opportunities find you without you seeking them because your reputation has spread beyond your immediate connections. By year 5, your network is generating more economic value than most people create through decades of traditional employment. Here's the brutal truth that concludes this chapter. The person with capital but no network will always lose to the person with a network but no capital. Capital is a commodity. Anyone with money can deploy it. Networks are unique, personal, and impossible to replicate quickly. You can lose all your money and rebuild it rapidly if you have a strong network. But if you have money and no network, you're perpetually vulnerable and limited. Starting today, treat every interaction as a potential investment in social capital. Be the person who helps first, delivers consistently, and builds genuine relationships. Your network will become the most valuable asset you never bought. Chapter 3. Invest in your health infrastructure, the foundation that multiplies every other investment. Let me tell you about 2 entrepreneurs I know who started their businesses in the same year with roughly equal skill levels and similar market opportunities. 5 years later, one had built a 7-figure business while the other had declared bankruptcy and was working a job they hated. The difference wasn't intelligence, capital, or even work ethic. The successful entrepreneur invested 30 minutes every morning in exercise and prioritized sleep. The bankrupt one worked 18-hour days, ate fast food at their desk, slept 4 hours a night, and told everyone who would listen how dedicated they were. By year 3, the sleep-deprived entrepreneur was making terrible decisions, missing opportunities due to brain fog, and eventually suffered a health crisis that destroyed everything they'd built. This isn't a morality tale about working too hard. This is basic economics. Your health is the operating system that runs every other program in your life, and when the operating system crashes, everything crashes with it. Here's the uncomfortable reality that nobody wants to hear. You can build the greatest skill stack in the world, you can construct a powerful network, you can have brilliant ideas and massive ambition, but if your body and mind aren't functioning optimally, you're building a mansion on quicksand. Every investment we'll discuss in this framework depends entirely on your capacity to think clearly, execute consistently, handle stress effectively, and sustain effort over years. Your health isn't something you deal with later when you have money and time. It's the prerequisite that determines whether you'll ever have money and time. The economic argument for health investment is staggering when you actually calculate it. Let's run the numbers on what poor health costs you in lost economic productivity. If you're operating at 70% capacity due to poor sleep, inadequate nutrition, or sedentary lifestyle, and you're working 50 hours per week, you're losing 15 hours of productive capacity every single week. Over a year, that's 780 hours of diminished output. If your time is worth even $20 per hour in terms of earning potential or value creation, poor health is costing you $15,600 annually in lost productivity alone. That doesn't count medical expenses, sick days, or the opportunity cost of projects you couldn't pursue because you lacked energy. But the calculation gets even more dramatic when you consider decision quality. Research in neuroscience and cognitive psychology consistently shows that sleep deprivation, poor nutrition, and lack of exercise significantly impair executive function, judgment, creativity, and emotional regulation. These aren't peripheral nice-to-haves. These are the core competencies that determine whether you make the right strategic decisions, recognize opportunities, solve complex problems, and navigate relationships effectively. One bad decision made because you were exhausted or mentally foggy can cost you years of progress. One opportunity missed because you didn't have the energy to pursue it can be the difference between breakthrough and stagnation. Now let's talk about the actual zero capital strategy for building health infrastructure that multiplies everything else you're doing. I need to be crystal clear about something up front. This chapter isn't about expensive gym memberships, organic superfood delivery services, or boutique fitness classes. Those things might be nice, but they're not necessary. Everything I'm about to outline can be done with exactly $0 if needed, because the fundamentals of human health haven't changed despite what the wellness industry wants you to believe. The foundation of health infrastructure rests on 4 pillars: sleep architecture, movement practice, nutritional intelligence, and stress management. Each pillar supports the others, and weakness in any one pillar undermines your entire system. Let's start with sleep architecture because it's simultaneously the most important and the most neglected investment you can make in yourself. Sleep isn't rest. It's active maintenance and optimization of your brain and body. During quality sleep, your brain consolidates memories, processes emotional experiences, clears metabolic waste through the lymphatic system, and literally rewires neural pathways to optimize learning. Your body repairs tissue, regulates hormones, strengthens immune function, and resets systems for the next day. When you shortchange sleep thinking you're gaining productive hours, you're actually destroying your capacity to be productive. 7 hours of work performed on 8 hours of sleep produces better output than 10 hours of work performed on 5 hours of sleep, and the research on this is overwhelming and consistent. Here's your zero-cost sleep optimization protocol. First, you're going to establish a consistent sleep schedule where you go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, including weekends. Your circadian rhythm, the internal biological clock that regulates sleep-wake cycles, functions optimally with consistency. When you constantly shift your sleep schedule, you're essentially giving yourself jet lag every few days. Pick a bedtime that allows for 8 hours of sleep before you need to wake up, then protect that schedule religiously for 30 days. This single change will improve your cognitive function, emotional stability, and physical energy more than any productivity hack or supplement. Second, you're going to create a sleep-conducive environment using things you already have access to. Your bedroom should be cool, ideally between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, because your body temperature needs to drop for optimal sleep. It should be as dark as possible. Cover LED lights on devices, use curtains or even towels over windows if you don't have blackout shades, because even small amounts of light can disrupt melatonin production. It should be quiet or masked with consistent white noise if you live in a noisy environment. You can create white noise using a fan you already own or free apps on your phone. Third, you're going to implement a 1-hour wind-down protocol before bed. This is non-negotiable because your brain cannot instantly transition from high stimulation to sleep mode. During this hour, you're eliminating screens, phones, computers, televisions, because the blue light they emit suppresses melatonin, and the content keeps your mind activated. Instead, you're reading physical books, journaling, doing light stretching, having calm conversations, or practicing breathing exercises. This protocol signals to your nervous system that it's time to shift from sympathetic activation to parasympathetic rest mode. Now let's address the second pillar, movement practice. Notice I didn't say exercise program or fitness routine, because those phrases carry baggage about gym memberships and equipment. Movement practice is about using your body regularly in ways that maintain and improve its function. The human body is designed for movement. Our ancestors walked miles daily, climbed, carried, squatted, and moved in varied ways throughout each day. Modern life has removed almost all necessary movement, and our bodies are deteriorating as a result. The zero capital movement practice is beautifully simple: walking and bodyweight training. Let's start with walking, which is probably the most underrated health intervention available. Walking 30 to 60 minutes daily provides cardiovascular benefits, improves insulin sensitivity, enhances mood through endorphin release, gives you time for creative thinking without distraction, exposes you to sunlight which regulates circadian rhythm and vitamin D production, and costs absolutely nothing. You don't need special shoes or clothing, you just need to prioritize the time. Here's how to implement walking as a non-negotiable practice. First, identify 30-minute blocks in your existing schedule where walking replaces something less valuable. Maybe you walk during phone calls instead of sitting. Maybe you walk during your lunch break instead of scrolling social media. Maybe you wake up 30 minutes earlier and walk before starting work. The specific timing matters less than the consistency. Second, treat these walks as appointments with yourself that you don't cancel. They're not optional when you feel like it. They're infrastructure maintenance that everything else depends on. For strength and mobility, bodyweight training requires zero equipment and can be done in any space large enough to lie down. A basic bodyweight routine includes push-ups for upper body pressing strength, bodyweight squats for lower body strength, planks for core stability, lunges for single leg strength and balance, and pull-ups or inverted rows if you have access to a bar or sturdy table. If you can't do standard versions of these exercises, there are easier progressions. Push-ups can be done against a wall or from your knees, squats can be done to a chair, planks can be done on your knees. The protocol is simple. 3 times per week, you're going to spend 20 to 30 minutes doing bodyweight exercises. You're going to progressively make them harder by adding repetitions, slowing down the tempo, or advancing to more difficult variations. This isn't about becoming a bodybuilder or athlete. It's about maintaining functional strength, bone density, metabolic health, and physical resilience. The investment is 90 minutes per week total, requires no money, and the return in terms of energy, confidence, and physical capability is enormous. The third pillar is nutritional intelligence, and this is where people get paralyzed by conflicting information and expensive solutions. Let me cut through all of the noise with a simple framework. Your body needs adequate protein for tissue maintenance and repair, sufficient healthy fats for hormone production and cellular function, enough carbohydrates to fuel activity, essential vitamins and minerals from varied whole foods, and adequate hydration. That's it. Everything else is optimization or marketing. The zero capital approach to nutrition isn't about trendy diets or expensive supplements. It's about making consistently better choices with whatever food budget you have. Here are the principles. First, prioritize protein at every meal because it increases satiety, preserves muscle mass, and requires more energy to digest than carbohydrates or fats. Inexpensive protein sources include eggs, canned fish, beans, lentils, and whatever meat is on sale. Second, eat mostly whole foods rather than processed foods when possible. Fourth, stay hydrated by drinking water throughout the day. Dehydration impairs cognitive function, physical performance, and mood, Yet most people walk around mildly dehydrated constantly. Carry a water bottle you already own and refill it multiple times daily. Fifth, practice eating to about 80% fullness rather than eating until you're stuffed. This traditional practice from Okinawa, where people live exceptionally long, healthy lives, helps maintain healthy body composition and reduces the energy crash that comes from overeating. Here's a practical implementation strategy. For the next 2 weeks, you're going to track what you currently eat without changing anything. Just write it down or use a free app. This awareness alone will shift your choices. Then for the following 2 weeks, you're going to make one small improvement. Maybe adding protein to breakfast, or replacing one processed snack with fruit and nuts, or drinking water before each meal. After those 2 weeks, you add another small improvement. This gradual approach prevents the overwhelm and rebellion that comes from trying to overhaul everything at once. The fourth pillar is stress management, and this might be the most critical for people building something with limited resources. When you're trying to create opportunities without capital, you're going to face uncertainty, rejection, setbacks, and pressure. If you don't have effective stress management practices, this chronic stress will destroy your health, decision-making ability, and relationships. Stress isn't the problem. Chronic unmanaged stress is the problem. Your nervous system has 2 modes: sympathetic activation for dealing with threats and challenges, and parasympathetic activation for rest, repair, and digestion. Modern life keeps most people stuck in sympathetic mode constantly, which leads to elevated cortisol, impaired immune function, poor sleep, anxiety, and eventually burnout or illness. You need daily practices that activate your parasympathetic nervous system and help you process stress rather than accumulating it. The zero-cost stress management toolkit includes several powerful practices. First is deliberate breathing exercises. Your breath is the only part of your autonomic nervous system you can consciously control, and you can use it to shift your nervous system state. A simple practice: box breathing, where you inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and repeat for 5 minutes. This immediately reduces heart rate and activates parasympathetic response. Do this when you wake up, before important tasks, and before bed. Second is journaling for emotional processing. When you're stressed or anxious, your thoughts loop repetitively without resolution. Writing them down externalizes them and often brings clarity, or at least reduces their emotional charge. Spend 10 minutes each evening writing about your day. What challenged you, what you're grateful for, and what you're thinking about. This costs nothing but a notebook and pen or a free digital document, but it significantly improves emotional regulation and mental clarity. Third is time in nature when possible. Research consistently shows that spending time in natural environments reduces cortisol, improves mood, and enhances cognitive function. This doesn't require hiking in wilderness. It can be sitting in a park, walking among trees, or even viewing nature through a window. If you live in an urban environment with limited nature access, even looking at images of nature provides measurable stress reduction benefits. Fourth is social connection for stress buffering. Humans are social creatures, and quality relationships are one of the strongest predictors of health and longevity. When you're stressed, the instinct might be to isolate, but reaching out to supportive people, whether friends, family, or community, reduces stress and provides perspective. This doesn't mean venting constantly about your problems, but rather maintaining connections that remind you you're not alone in your challenges. Let me address a critical mistake people make with health investment. The all-or-nothing thinking that leads to cycles of extreme effort followed by complete abandonment. Someone decides to transform their health, so they commit to waking up at 5 in the morning, working out for 2 hours, meal prepping every Sunday, meditating for an hour, and eliminating all sugar and processed foods. They maintain this for maybe 2 weeks before life intervenes. They miss a few days, feel like they've vealed, and abandon everything. Then they're back to zero, feeling worse than before they started. The sustainable approach is what I call minimum viable health practices. These are the smallest daily actions that provide the majority of health benefits and that you can maintain even during your busiest or most stressful periods. Your minimum viable health practice might be 8 hours of sleep, a 20-minute walk, 1 serving of vegetables, drinking 8 glasses of water, and 5 minutes of breathing exercises. That's it. On good days, when you have more time and energy, you do more, but you never go below your minimum viable practices because they're non-negotiable infrastructure. Here's your action plan for building health infrastructure over the next 90 days with zero capital required. Week 1 through 2, you're going to focus exclusively on sleep optimization. Implement the consistent schedule, environment changes, and wind-down protocol. Track how you feel and perform. Week 3 through 4, you're going to add daily walking. Start with whatever duration feels manageable and build from there. Week 5 through 6, you're going to add bodyweight training 3 times per week. Week 7 through 8, you're going to implement the nutritional awareness and small improvements process. Week 9 through 12, you're going to add daily stress management practices and refine everything into a sustainable routine. By day 90, you'll have transformed your health infrastructure without spending a dollar. More importantly, you'll notice dramatic improvements in your energy levels, mental clarity, emotional stability, and physical capability. These improvements will multiply the effectiveness of every other investment you're making in skills, network, and opportunities. You'll make better decisions, execute more consistently, handle setbacks more resiliently, and sustain effort over the long timelines required for meaningful success. The final truth about health investment is this: every day of neglect creates compound interest in the wrong direction. Poor health habits accumulate into chronic conditions, reduced capacity, and eventual crisis. But every day of positive health practices also compounds. The walk you take today makes tomorrow's walk easier. The good sleep you get tonight improves your decisions tomorrow. The stress you process today doesn't accumulate into anxiety or burnout next month. You're either investing in health infrastructure that appreciates, or you're allowing health debt that will eventually bankrupt you. Choose wisely, starting today. Chapter 4. Invest in your information diet. Curating knowledge that compounds into wisdom. I want you to imagine 2 people who are identical in every measurable way. Same age, same educational background, same starting income, same work ethic, same intelligence. They both commit to personal development and decide to spend 1 hour every day learning. Person A spends that hour scrolling through social media feeds, watching random YouTube videos, consuming celebrity gossip, and jumping between trending topics. Person B spends that hour reading carefully selected books, listening to educational podcasts during commutes, studying successful people in their field, and deliberately learning skills that compound. Fast forward 5 years. Person A knows a lot about current events and viral trends from 5 years ago that nobody remembers. Person B has consumed over 100 books, developed expertise in multiple domains, and built a knowledge foundation that generates opportunities and income. The difference isn't effort or time invested, it's the quality of information consumed. Here's the brutal economic reality about information in the modern world. You are drowning in an ocean of low-quality, high-volume information designed to capture your attention rather than improve your life. Every app on your phone, every website you visit, every platform you engage with has been engineered by the smartest psychologists and designers to keep you consuming. They succeed not because you're weak-willed, but because human attention is a finite resource being attacked by infinite sophisticated systems. The person who doesn't deliberately curate their information diet will default to junk information. The same way someone who doesn't deliberately curate their food diet will default to junk food. Both produce predictable negative outcomes over time. The concept of an information diet isn't metaphorical, it's precisely analogous to your nutritional diet. Just as food provides the raw materials your body uses to build cells, regulate systems, and generate energy, information provides the raw materials your mind uses to form beliefs, make decisions, and create models of how the world works. Consume nutritious food consistently and your body becomes strong and healthy. Consume junk food consistently and your body becomes weak and diseased. Consume high-quality information consistently and your mind becomes sharp, creative, and effective. Consume junk information consistently and your mind becomes scattered, anxious, and ineffective. Let me give you the framework for understanding information quality, because this is where most people fail. They assume all reading is good, all learning is valuable, all content consumption is productive. This is dangerously wrong. Information exists on a spectrum from toxic to transformative, and you need to be ruthlessly selective about what you allow into your consciousness. Toxic information actively harms you. It creates anxiety without empowerment, outrage without productive action, fear without preparation, or comparison without inspiration. Junk information is empty calories. It's mildly entertaining but provides no lasting value, teaches you nothing useful, and you won't remember it next week. Nutritious information improves your understanding, teaches applicable skills, expands your perspective, or provides actionable frameworks. Transformative information fundamentally changes how you see the world and creates cascading positive changes in multiple areas of your life. Your zero capital strategy for optimizing your information diet starts with a complete audit of where your attention currently goes. For the next 7 days, you're going to track every piece of content you consume, every article, video, podcast, social media session, news program, everything. Not to judge yourself, but to create awareness. Most people have absolutely no idea where their attention actually goes because consumption has become unconscious habit. Write down what you consumed, how long you spent on it, and most importantly, whether you can articulate one valuable thing you gained from it. At the end of 7 days, you'll likely be shocked by how much time you spent consuming information that provided zero value. Now comes the elimination phase, which is uncomfortable but necessary. You're going to identify the information sources that consistently provide toxic or junk information and systematically remove them from your life. This means unfollowing social media accounts that make you feel bad about yourself or angry at the world without empowering you to improve anything. It means unsubscribing from email newsletters you never read or that don't provide value. It means deleting apps that exploit your attention for their profit. It means stopping the consumption of news that's designed to trigger emotional response, rather than inform you about things you can actually influence. I know what you're thinking, but I need to stay informed about current events. Let me challenge this belief directly. The news industrial complex has convinced people that consuming hourly updates about events they cannot influence is being informed. It's not. It's being anxious and distracted. Here's a simple test. Think about the news you consumed last month. How much of it do you remember? Of what you remember, how much actually improved your life or enabled better decisions? For most people, the answers are almost nothing and none. You're spending hours consuming information that evaporates from your memory and provides no value, while telling yourself it's important to stay informed. A better approach: designate one specific time per week, maybe Sunday morning, where you spend 30 minutes catching up on significant news from quality sources that provide context and analysis, rather than minute-by-minute updates designed to trigger stress. This gives you genuine awareness of important developments without the constant cortisol drip of news notifications throughout every day. The other 6 days and 23.5 hours, you're free to focus on information that actually builds your capacity and opportunities. Now let's talk about the foundation of a high-quality information diet. Reading books, not articles, not blog posts, not social media threads, but actual books where authors have spent years researching, thinking deeply, and organizing knowledge into coherent frameworks. Books are compressed expertise and experience. When you read a quality non-fiction book, you're getting access to potentially decades of someone's learning, mistakes, and insights for less than the cost of a single meal. Even better, books are available completely free through public libraries, digital lending apps, or free PDF versions of older titles. The return on investment for reading is absurd. Maybe 10 hours of your time to gain knowledge that took someone 20 years to accumulate. Here's your book reading implementation strategy that requires zero capital. First, you're going to commit to reading for 30 minutes every single day, non-negotiable. Not when you feel like it, not when you have extra time, every day, at a scheduled time. For most people, the best times are first thing in the morning before other demands arise, or last thing before bed as part of the wind-down protocol we discussed in the health chapter. 30 minutes daily equals 3.5 hours weekly, which translates to approximately 1 book every 2 weeks or 25 to 30 books annually. In 5 years, you'll have read 125 to 150 books, while someone who doesn't prioritize reading has read maybe 5. But quantity without quality is pointless, so you need a selection framework. I recommend the 70 to 20-10 approach. 70% of your reading should be directly relevant to skills you're building or problems you're trying to solve. If you're learning copywriting, you're reading books about persuasion, marketing psychology, and effective writing. If you're building a business, you're reading about business models, customer acquisition, and financial management. This reading has immediate practical application. You can implement what you learn the same week you read it. 20% of your reading should be adjacent to your main focus, but not directly about it. These books provide context, mental models, and perspectives that enhance your primary work. If you're in marketing, you might read about psychology, behavioral economics, or storytelling. If you're building software, you might read about design thinking or user psychology. These adjacent readings often provide the breakthrough insights that direct reading in your field won't give you, because everyone in your field is reading the same things. 10% of your reading should be completely unrelated to your professional focus. Biography, history, science, philosophy, fiction. This reading prevents tunnel vision, sparks creativity through exposure to different domains, and makes you a more interesting person with broader reference points. Some of your best ideas will come from connecting concepts from completely unrelated fields to problems in your domain. Now let's discuss the second component of a high-quality information diet: curated podcast and audio learning. Podcasts are remarkable because they allow you to learn during time that would otherwise be dead: commuting, exercising, doing household tasks, walking. The same 30-minute walk we discussed in the health chapter can simultaneously be a learning session, if you're listening, to quality educational content. This is time stacking at its finest. You're investing in health and information diets simultaneously. The key with podcasts is curation. There are millions of podcasts, and most are either entertainment or low-quality conversation. You need to identify the 5 to 10 podcasts that consistently provide high-density, valuable information in your areas of interest, then commit to those rather than randomly sampling hundreds of shows. Look for podcasts that interview experts in depth, that provide actionable frameworks, that challenge your thinking, or that analyze important topics with nuance rather than sound bites. Here's a specific protocol. Identify 2 podcasts in your primary field of focus, 1 podcast in an adjacent field, and 1 podcast that's intellectually stimulating but unrelated to your work. Subscribe to only these 4 and commit to actually listening to episodes rather than letting them pile up in an endless queue that creates anxiety. When you finish an episode, ask yourself what you learned that you can apply. If a podcast stops providing consistent value, unsubscribe and find a replacement. Your attention is too valuable to waste on mediocre content out of loyalty or habit. The third component is strategic social media use, which sounds contradictory given how much I've criticized social media. But platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube can be incredibly valuable information sources if you use them intentionally rather than algorithmically. The problem isn't the platform, it's passive consumption driven by algorithmic feeds designed to maximize engagement rather than value. The solution is to transform these platforms from passive entertainment into active learning tools. Chapter 5. Invest in your creative output. Building assets while others consume. There's a fundamental economic divide happening right now that will determine who builds wealth in the next decade and who stays financially trapped. And most people don't even realize which side of the divide they're on. On one side are the consumers, people who spend their discretionary time watching, scrolling, liking, and passively experiencing content that others have created. On the other side are the creators, people who spend their time producing, building, sharing, and leaving digital artifacts that compound in value over time. The consumers are renting their attention to platforms and content creators, getting entertainment in return, but building zero equity. The creators are building assets that appreciate, attract opportunities, and generate value long after the initial work is done. The tragic part is that both groups are spending roughly the same amount of time on digital platforms, but one group is investing while the other is merely spending. Let me show you the mathematics of creation versus consumption with a concrete example that will make this concept visceral. Imagine 2 people who both spend 2 hours per day on digital activities beyond their regular work. Person A spends those 2 hours watching Netflix, scrolling Instagram, playing mobile games, and browsing Reddit. This is how they relax and unwind, and there's nothing inherently wrong with entertainment. However, after 1 year of this pattern, they've consumed approximately 730 hours of content and have exactly nothing to show for it except memories of shows they watched and posts they scrolled past. They've invested 0, built 0, and created 0 assets. Person B spends those same 2 hours creating content in their area of interest. Maybe they write articles about marketing strategies they're testing. Maybe they record videos teaching skills they're developing. Maybe they build small software tools that solve problems they encounter. Maybe they design graphics, compose music, or create any form of output that exists independently after they finish working on it. After 1 year, Person B has also invested 730 hours, but they've created something dramatically different. They have a portfolio of 100 articles or 50 videos or 20 small projects. More importantly, these creations now work for them perpetually. The article written in January continues to attract readers in December. The video published in March continues to teach people in November. The project built in June continues to demonstrate capability to potential clients or employers. Person B has converted time into assets that compound, while Person A converted the exact same amount of time into experiences that evaporated. But the mathematics get even more compelling when you consider second-order effects. Person B's creative output starts attracting attention from people interested in their topic. Some of these people reach out with questions, opportunities, or collaboration ideas. Person B's body of work demonstrates expertise in a way that a resume or LinkedIn profile never could, because anyone can claim they're skilled, but only actual work proves it. When opportunities arise, Person B has a portfolio that speaks for itself. When Person B applies for positions or pitches clients, they don't just tell people what they can do, they show a year's worth of evidence. The creative output has become a signal that cuts through noise and skepticism. Now I need to address the psychological resistance you're probably feeling right now, because almost everyone feels it when confronted with the idea of creating publicly. The resistance sounds like this: but I'm not an expert yet. I don't have anything valuable to share. Who would care about what I create? I'll wait until I'm more qualified, more experienced, more ready. This resistance feels like humility and reasonable caution, but it's actually fear disguised as prudence, and it's costing you years of compound growth. Here's the truth that will liberate you if you can accept it. You don't need to be the world's foremost expert to create value through content. You only need to be a few steps ahead of someone else and willing to document what you're learning. The concept I want you to embrace is called learning in public, and it's one of the most powerful wealth-building strategies available to people without capital. Learning in public means you document your journey as you acquire skills, solve problems, and build things. You share your process, your mistakes, your discoveries, and your progress openly. This feels vulnerable because you're essentially saying, I don't know everything, I'm still learning, and I'm going to let you watch me figure things out. But this vulnerability is actually your competitive advantage for several reasons. First, there are far more people a few steps behind you than there are people far ahead of you. If you're 3 months into learning web development, there are thousands of people just starting who would benefit enormously from seeing what you learned in your first 3 months. They don't need a senior developer with 20 years of experience explaining advanced architecture patterns. They need someone who just recently struggled with the exact problems they're facing now. Your recent experience makes you the perfect teacher for them because you remember what confused you and how you overcame it. The expert who learned this 20 years ago has forgotten what it's like to be a beginner. Second, learning in public creates accountability and accelerates your growth. When you commit to sharing what you learn, you engage with the material more deeply because you know you'll need to explain it to others. This forces you to ensure you truly understand concepts rather than fooling yourself with surface-level familiarity. You also receive feedback, corrections, and alternative perspectives from people who engage with your content, which speeds up your learning dramatically compared to studying in isolation. Third, learning in public builds your network automatically and authentically. When you share valuable insights about topics you're passionate about, you naturally attract other people interested in the same topics. These aren't random connections, they're the people who already share common interests and values with you. Some will be peers you can learn alongside, some will be mentors ahead of you who appreciate your initiative, and some will be people behind you who see you as helpful and knowledgeable. All of these connections create opportunities. Let me give you the practical zero capital framework for starting to create and share output consistently. The first decision is choosing your primary platform based on your natural communication style and your target audience. If you think clearly through writing and your audience reads, start a blog using free platforms like Medium, Substack, or even LinkedIn articles. If you're comfortable on camera and your audience watches video, start a YouTube channel using just your smartphone camera. If you prefer audio conversation, start a podcast using free recording software. If you work visually, share your designs or artwork on Instagram or Behance. The platform matters less than consistency and quality of thinking. Your content strategy should follow what I call the educational documentation approach. You're not trying to create entertainment or go viral, although those might happen as side effects. You're documenting what you're learning and sharing educational value based on your experiences. Every time you solve a problem, you write about how you solved it. Every time you learn a new concept, you explain it in your own words and share what clicked for you. Every time you complete a project, you share what you built, why you built it, what challenges you faced, and what you learned. This approach ensures you always have content ideas because you're simply documenting your actual work and learning. Here's a specific content creation rhythm that works sustainably without overwhelming your schedule. You're going to commit to creating one substantial piece of content per week. Substantial means it provides genuine value and demonstrates thought, not that it's incredibly long or polished. For written content, this might be a 1,000-word article. For video, maybe a 10-minute explanation or tutorial. For audio, a 15 to 20-minute episode. You choose one day per week, perhaps Sunday, where you spend 2 hours creating this content. You reflect on what you learned or accomplished that week, identify the most valuable insight or experience, and create content explaining it clearly for others. This weekly rhythm means you produce 52 pieces of content per year, which is more than most people create in their entire lives. After 6 months, you have 26 articles or videos. After 1 year, you have 52. After 2 years, you have over 100 pieces of content working for you perpetually, attracting attention, demonstrating expertise, and creating opportunities. And this entire asset base was built by investing just 2 hours per week that you previously might have spent consuming other people's content. Now let's talk about quality versus quantity, because this is where many people get paralyzed. They want their first piece of content to be perfect, so they never publish it. They revise endlessly, doubt themselves constantly, and eventually abandon the whole project. Here's the counterintuitive truth. Your first content will not be great, and that's completely fine. Your first article will have awkward phrasing and incomplete ideas. Your first video will have poor audio and nervous delivery. Your first podcast will have long pauses and meandering structure. This is not just okay, it's necessary. You cannot get to good without going through bad. You cannot improve what you don't create. The strategy is to embrace what I call progressive improvement through volume. You're going to create consistently at a pace you can sustain, and you're going to get slightly better with each piece. Your 10th piece will be noticeably better than your first. Your 50th will be better than your 10th. Your 100th will be dramatically better than your 50th. But you only reach piece number 100 by publishing pieces 1 through 99, even though they're imperfect. People who wait for perfection never start. People who embrace imperfection and iterate become exceptional over time. Let me share the concept of evergreen content, which is content that remains valuable indefinitely, rather than being tied to current events or trends. Evergreen content is your highest leverage creation because it continues providing value and attracting attention years after you publish it. A tutorial on fundamental concepts in your field will be useful in 5 years. An explanation of how to solve a common problem will help people indefinitely. A framework for thinking about strategic decisions doesn't expire. When you create evergreen content, you're building assets that appreciate because they accumulate views, shares, and opportunities over time without requiring additional work from you. The content creation habit also develops meta skills that multiply your value in unexpected ways. You improve at communicating complex ideas clearly, which makes you more effective in every professional interaction. You develop the ability to synthesize information and identify patterns, which enhances your strategic thinking. You build confidence in your expertise because you've articulated what you know publicly and received validation. You create a feedback loop where teaching forces deeper learning, which gives you more to teach, which forces even deeper learning. This virtuous cycle accelerates your growth far beyond what isolated study achieves. Now, I want to address monetization, because many people assume creating content must immediately generate income, or it's not worth doing. This is short-term thinking that misses the real value. Your content creates value in multiple ways beyond direct monetization. It attracts opportunities, speaking engagements, consulting projects, job offers, partnerships, It builds credibility that allows you to charge premium rates for your services. It creates relationships with people who find your work valuable. It demonstrates your thinking and capabilities to potential clients or employers better than any resume could. Direct monetization through ads, sponsorships, or paid subscriptions is wonderful when it happens, but it's often the least valuable benefit of consistent content creation. Here's your 90-day implementation plan for becoming a creator rather than just a consumer. Week 1 through 2, you're going to choose your platform and study 10 examples of content you admire in your chosen format. You're not copying them, but you're understanding what makes content valuable and engaging. Week 3, you're creating your first piece of content. It will feel terrible and awkward. Publish it anyway. Week 4 through 12, you're publishing one piece of content every single week without exception. No waiting for inspiration, no skipping weeks because you're busy, no excuses. You're building the creation habit and the asset base simultaneously. By day 90, you'll have published 12 to 13 pieces of content. Some will have gotten more attention than others. Some you'll be proud of and others you'll cringe at. But all of them together form the beginning of a portfolio that demonstrates you're someone who creates value and shares it generously. More importantly, you've transformed your relationship with digital platforms from passive consumer to active creator. And this shift alone will change your economic trajectory more than most strategies people spend money trying to implement. The final truth about creative output is this: in an attention economy where everyone consumes and few create, creators capture disproportionate value. Your willingness to create publicly, share generously, and improve consistently gives you exponential advantage over the vast majority who only consume. Starting today, you're no longer renting your attention to others. You're building assets that compound indefinitely. Chapter 6. Invest in your personal systems, building infrastructure that automates success. Let me tell you about a revelation that changed everything for me, and it will probably challenge how you think about productivity and success. I used to believe that successful people were simply more disciplined, more motivated, or had better willpower than everyone else. I thought they woke up every day fired up and ready to execute, pushing through resistance with pure determination. Then I started studying extremely productive people closely, and I discovered something completely different. The most consistently successful people aren't relying on motivation or willpower at all. They've built systems that make the right actions automatic, easy, and almost inevitable. They've created personal infrastructure that guides them toward their goals even on days when they feel terrible, unmotivated, or overwhelmed. The difference between someone who achieves their goals and someone who doesn't usually isn't desire or knowledge. It's the presence or absence of effective systems. Here's the fundamental principle you need to understand. Motivation is a terrible foundation for achievement because it fluctuates wildly based on your mood, energy, circumstances, and dozens of other variables you can't control. Some days you wake up energized and excited about your goals. Other days you wake up exhausted, discouraged, or distracted by problems. If your productivity depends on feeling motivated, you're essentially gambling with your future, hoping that you'll feel good often enough to make progress. This approach fails predictably and repeatedly for everyone who tries it. Systems, on the other hand, work regardless of how you feel because they remove the need for constant decision-making and willpower expenditure. When you have effective systems, the right actions happen automatically because you've designed your environment and routines to make them the path of least resistance. Let me give you a concrete example that illustrates the power of systems over motivation. Imagine two people who both want to write a book. Person A waits for inspiration and motivation. They tell themselves they'll write when they feel creative, when they have a good block of time, when they're in the right headspace. Some weeks they write for hours because they feel inspired. Other weeks they write nothing because they're busy or don't feel like it. After a year, they might have 30 or 40 pages of scattered material that doesn't form a coherent manuscript, and they're frustrated and disappointed with their lack of progress. Person B takes a completely different approach. They build a system around their writing goal. They decide that every single morning, immediately after their first coffee, they will write for exactly 30 minutes before checking email or doing anything else. They set up a dedicated writing space that has no distractions. They use a simple text editor that prevents them from obsessing over formatting. They track their daily word count on a calendar they can see, creating a visual chain of consistency they don't want to break. They don't wait for inspiration. They write whether they feel like it or not, whether the words flow easily or not, whether they think the output is good or not. After a year, Person B has written consistently for 350 or so days, producing somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 words. They have a complete first draft of their book, possibly even a revised second draft. The difference isn't that Person B was more motivated, it's that they built a system that produced output regardless of motivation. The economic value of personal systems is staggering when you calculate it properly. Think about any important goal you have, whether it's building a skill, growing a business, improving your health, or creating something valuable. Now think about the difference between making progress on that goal 3 days per month when you feel motivated versus making progress 25 days per month because you have systems that ensure consistency. Over 1 year, the first approach gives you 36 days of progress. The second gives you 300 days of progress. That's not a marginal difference, it's an order of magnitude difference. This is why people with mediocre systems often outperform people with superior talent or resources. Consistency compounds dramatically over time, and systems create consistency that motivation never can. Now let's talk about how to actually build personal systems that work, starting with the foundational principle of environmental design. Your environment is constantly influencing your behavior, usually unconsciously. If your phone is sitting next to you while you're trying to focus, you'll check it constantly regardless of your intentions because the visual cue triggers the habit. If unhealthy snacks are easily accessible in your kitchen, you'll eat them even when you're not particularly hungry because availability drives consumption. If your workspace is cluttered and chaotic, your thinking will be scattered and unfocused because external disorder creates internal disorder. Most people try to overcome poor environmental design through willpower, which is exhausting and ultimately fails. The smarter approach is to design your environment so that the behaviors you want are easy and the behaviors you want to avoid are difficult. Here's how to implement environmental design for your most important goals with zero financial investment. Start by identifying the 3 behaviors that would most significantly move you toward your goals if you did them consistently. Maybe it's writing daily, exercising, making sales calls, learning a new skill, or creating content. For each behavior, you're going to manipulate your environment to make it as frictionless as possible. If you want to write daily, you set up a dedicated writing space the night before with your laptop open to a blank document, a glass of water ready, and everything else cleared away. When you sit down, there's zero friction between you and starting to write. If you want to exercise in the morning, you lay out your workout clothes the night before, set your shoes by the door, and perhaps prep a pre-workout snack. You've removed every excuse and obstacle between waking up and exercising. Simultaneously, you're going to add friction to behaviors you want to reduce. If you waste too much time on social media, you delete the apps from your phone and only access them through a web browser on your computer, adding multiple steps between impulse and action. If you tend to snack on junk food mindlessly, you remove it from your house entirely, so that eating it requires a deliberate trip to the store rather than just opening a cabinet. If you get distracted by news websites during work, you use free browser extensions that block access almost during your designated focus hours. You're not relying on discipline to resist temptation. You're making temptation harder to access than the behaviors you want to cultivate. The second component of effective personal systems is what I call routine architecture, which is the deliberate design of your daily and weekly rhythms to ensure that important actions happen automatically. Most people's routines have evolved accidentally based on immediate needs and random habits, rather than being consciously designed to serve their goals. The result is that their days are reactive rather than proactive, filled with urgent tasks and distractions while important long-term activities get perpetually postponed. Routine architecture flips this by creating non-negotiable blocks of time for your highest priority activities, then fitting everything else around them. Here's the practical implementation of routine architecture. First, identify your chronotype. Are you most mentally sharp in the morning, afternoon, or evening? This isn't about what you wish were true or what seems admirable. It's about honestly assessing when you have peak cognitive performance. Once you know your peak hours, you protect them ruthlessly for your most important cognitive work. If you're sharpest from 6 to 10 in the morning, those 4 hours are sacred time for deep work on your primary goals. Writing, learning, creating, strategic thinking, or whatever moves your most important projects forward. Everything else, email, meetings, administrative tasks, shallow work, happens outside these peak hours. Second, you create what I call keystone routines that anchor your day and trigger chains of positive behaviors. A keystone routine is a sequence of actions you do in the same order at the same time every day, which signals to your brain that it's time to transition into a particular mode. For example, your morning keystone routine might be wake up at the same time, drink water, do 5 minutes of stretching, make coffee, sit in your designated workspace, and open your most important project. This sequence, repeated daily, becomes automatic through repetition. After a few weeks, sitting in your workspace with coffee automatically puts you in focus mode because your brain has learnt the pattern. You're not fighting to concentrate, the routine has primed you for it. Third, you implement time blocking rather than working from a to-do list. To-do lists create anxiety because they show you everything you need to do without showing you when you'll do it, creating a constant sense of being behind. Time blocking means you assign every task or activity to a specific time slot in your calendar. Your deep work happens from 6 to 10 every morning. Your exercise happens from 10 to 11. Your shallow work and communication happens from 11 to 1. Your afternoon is blocked for meetings or client work. Your evening is blocked for family time and personal activities. When everything has a designated time, you eliminate the mental overhead of constantly deciding what to do next. And you create realistic expectations about what you can actually accomplish in a day. Let me introduce you to the concept of decision minimization, which is about reducing the number of trivial decisions you make daily so that you preserve mental energy for important decisions. Every decision you make, no matter how small, depletes your finite reservoir of mental energy. This is why you can make good decisions in the morning, but by evening you're eating junk food and watching random videos. You've exhausted your decision-making capacity on hundreds of trivial choices throughout the day. Highly effective people understand this and systematically eliminate unnecessary decisions through standardization and automation. The practical application starts with areas where you're making the same decisions repeatedly. What to wear each day is a perfect example. Many successful people wear essentially the same outfit every day, not because they lack creativity or resources, but because they refuse to spend mental energy on a decision that doesn't matter to their goals. You can implement a personal uniform using clothes you already own. Maybe it's jeans and a black shirt for casual settings, or a rotation of 3 similar outfits for professional settings. The specific choice matters less than eliminating the daily decision. Similarly, you can standardize your meals to reduce food-related decisions. This doesn't mean eating the exact same thing every day, which would be boring and potentially nutritionally inadequate. It means having a standard breakfast you eat most mornings, a rotation of 3 or 4 lunch options, and perhaps 5 dinner templates you cycle through. You're not deciding what to eat from infinite options every single time you're hungry. You're choosing from a small menu of healthy options you've already decided on, which takes 30 seconds instead of 30 minutes and prevents decision fatigue from leading to poor choices. Another powerful systems concept is implementation intentions, which is a fancy term for the simple practice of deciding in advance exactly when, where, and how you'll do important activities. Research in behavioral psychology consistently shows that vague goals like, "I'll exercise more," or "I'll work on my business," fail at remarkably high rates, while specific implementation intentions like, I'll run for 30 minutes at 6:30 every Monday, Wednesday and Friday on the trail near my house succeed at dramatically higher rates. The specificity removes ambiguity and creates automatic triggers. When Monday morning arrives, you don't deliberate about whether to exercise or when or how. You already decided, so you just execute. You can apply implementation intentions to any important behavior. Instead of "I'll read more," you commit to "I'll read for 30 minutes every night at 9 o'clock in the armchair in my bedroom." Instead of "I'll reach out to potential clients," you decide every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 o'clock, I'll send 3 personalized outreach messages to potential clients I've researched. The specific plan removes the friction of deciding what to do, when to do it, and how to start, which are the main obstacles that prevent action. Now let's discuss the system of tracking and measurement, which provides feedback that keeps you honest and motivated over time. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed tends to improve. When you track your behaviors consistently, several powerful things happen. First, you create awareness of whether you're actually doing what you intend to do rather than what you think you're doing. Most people dramatically overestimate their consistency because our memories are unreliable and biased. Second, tracking creates accountability to yourself. When you see a visual representation of your consistency or lack thereof, it's harder to lie to yourself about your effort. Third, tracking provides data that helps you optimize your systems over time by showing you what's working and what isn't. The simplest and most effective tracking method is visual habit tracking. Using a calendar or grid you can see every day, you identify your 3 to 5 most important daily behaviors, then you mark each day you complete them. This creates a visual chain of X marks that you become motivated to maintain. The system works because it's incredibly simple, it provides immediate visual feedback, and it creates a psychological desire to not break the chain once you've built momentum. You can implement this with a physical calendar on your wall and a marker, or with free apps designed for habit tracking. The specific tool matters less than the daily practice of marking your completion. Here's your 90-day implementation plan for building personal systems. Week 1 through 2, you're going to audit your current environment and routines, identifying what's supporting your goals and what's sabotaging them. Week 3 through 4, you're implementing environmental design changes to make good behaviors easier and bad behaviors harder. Week 5 through 6, you're establishing your keystone morning routine and protecting your peak hours for deep work. Week 7 through 8, you're implementing time blocking for your entire week and standardizing recurring decisions. Week 9 through 10, you're creating implementation intentions for your most important goals. Week 11 through 12, you're implementing visual tracking and refining all your systems based on what you've learned. By day 90, you'll have transformed from someone who relies on motivation and willpower to someone who has infrastructure that produces results automatically. You'll notice that important activities happen consistently without internal struggle. You'll have more mental energy because you've eliminated hundreds of trivial decisions. You'll make faster progress on your goals because systems create consistency that compounds dramatically over time. Most importantly, you'll have proven to yourself that success isn't about superhuman discipline. It's about intelligent design of your environment, routines, and processes. Systems are the ultimate zero capital investment that multiplies the return on every other investment you make. Chapter 7. Invest in your reputation. Currency, building trust that opens every door. I want to share something that took me years to understand fully. And when I finally grasped it, everything about how I approached my career and relationships changed. There's a currency more valuable than money, more powerful than connections, and more enduring than any skill you can develop. This currency is your reputation, and it's the one asset that determines whether doors open for you effortlessly or remain permanently closed, regardless of your qualifications. Your reputation is what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's the sum total of every interaction you've had, every promise you've kept or broken, every time you showed up or disappeared, every moment you chose integrity or convenience. Most people think about reputation passively. as something that just happens to them based on their work. But the people who build extraordinary careers and opportunities understand that reputation is something you invest in deliberately, strategically, and consistently, and it requires zero financial capital but enormous intentionality. Let me explain the economics of reputation through a story that will make this concept concrete. Two freelance designers, equally talented with similar portfolios, both pitch the same high-paying client. The client has worked with neither of them before, so they start researching. Designer A has a beautiful portfolio, but when the client asks around, they hear mixed things. Some past clients say the designer was brilliant but missed deadlines. Others mention communication was spotty and revisions took forever. A few people say the designer was great to work with, but there's enough inconsistency that doubt creeps in. Designer B also has a strong portfolio, and when the client investigates, every single person says the same things. This designer delivers exactly what they promise when they promise it, communicates proactively about any issues, and often exceeds expectations with small extra touches that show they care about the client's success. Who gets the project? Designer B. Every single time, even if Designer A's portfolio is slightly more impressive. Why? Because the client can trust Designer B's reputation, which reduces their risk to nearly zero, while Designer A represents uncertainty and potential headaches despite their talent. This scenario plays out thousands of times daily across every industry and profession. Talent and skill are important, but they're table stakes. Everyone competing at a certain level has talent and skill. What separates those who get premium opportunities from those who struggle isn't capability, it's reputation. Your reputation precedes you into every room, every pitch, every interview, every potential partnership. It either opens doors before you arrive or closes them before you can knock. The beautiful part about reputation as an investment is that it costs nothing financially to build but compounds in value faster than almost any other asset you can create. Every kept promise is a deposit. Every exceeded expectation is compound interest. Every person who experiences your integrity becomes an evangelist who spreads your reputation to people you've never met, multiplying your opportunities geometrically. Now let's talk about the specific components that constitute a powerful reputation and how you build each one deliberately. The foundation of all reputation is reliability, which means you do what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it. This sounds embarrassingly simple, almost insultingly basic, yet it's shockingly rare. Most people are unreliable in small ways they don't even notice. They say they'll send something by end of day and send it 2 days later. They commit to a meeting time and show up 5 minutes late. They promise to follow up and forget entirely. Each of these small failures seems inconsequential in isolation, but they accumulate into a reputation for unreliability that closes opportunities you never even knew existed. Building a reputation for reliability requires a fundamental shift in how you make commitments. The rule is simple and non-negotiable. Never commit to something unless you're absolutely certain you can deliver it. And always deliver what you commit to even if circumstances make it difficult. This means you under-promise and over-deliver rather than the reverse. If you think something will take you 3 days, you tell people 5 days, then deliver it in 4. You've built in buffer for unexpected complications while creating the positive surprise of early delivery. If you're not sure you can make a meeting, you don't tentatively commit and cancel later. You simply say you can't commit to that time and suggest an alternative when you're certain. This approach might feel overly cautious initially, but it builds an ironclad reputation where your word becomes as reliable as a signed contract. The practical implementation of reliability starts with a personal policy I call absolute promise tracking. Every single commitment you make to another person, no matter how small, goes into a system and you review daily. This could be a simple note file on your phone, a task management app, or a physical notebook. The specific tool doesn't matter, but the practice of capturing every promise and reviewing it daily ensures nothing falls through the cracks. When you tell someone you'll send them an article, it goes in your system. When you commit to providing feedback on their work, it goes in your system. When you say you'll make an introduction, it goes in your system. Then each morning you review this list and ensure that everything gets done when promised. This one practice alone will transform your reputation because you'll become the rare person who actually follows through on everything they say. The second component of powerful reputation is generosity, which means you give value freely without constantly calculating what you'll get in return. Generous people share knowledge, make introductions, offer help, provide resources, and generally look for ways to contribute to others' success without keeping a ledger of who owes them what. This generosity creates a reputation that attracts opportunities because people want to work with, recommend, and help those who have been generous to them or to others. The economic principle at work is reciprocity at scale. When you help 10 people genuinely, each of those people becomes predisposed to help you when opportunity arises, and they also tell others about your generosity, expanding your reputation to people you've never met. The return on generosity is exponential and often comes from unexpected sources. Implementing strategic generosity requires a shift from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking. Scarcity thinking says that your knowledge, connection, and resources are limited, so you must hoard them or trade them carefully for equal value. Abundance thinking recognizes that knowledge grows when shared, connections multiply when facilitated, and resources often increase when deployed to help others. The practical application is establishing a weekly generosity practice where you deliberately look for ways to help people in your network without being asked. Maybe you see someone asking a question you can answer, so you take 15 minutes to provide a thoughtful response. Maybe you realize 2 people in your network should know each other, so you make an introduction with context about why it would be valuable for both. Maybe you discover a resource or opportunity that would benefit someone you know, so you send it to them with a note. These small acts of generosity cost you nothing financially, but build reputation capital that compounds over years. The third component is integrity, which means you maintain your values and standards even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or costly in the short term. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching and when doing the wrong thing would be easier or more profitable. People with integrity admit mistakes rather than hiding them, tell hard truths rather than comfortable lies, and turn down opportunities that don't align with their values even when they need the money or recognition. Integrity is the ultimate reputation builder because people can trust you completely, knowing that you won't compromise your principles for convenience or profit. This creates relationships and opportunities that simply aren't available to people whose integrity is situational. Building a reputation for integrity starts with defining your non-negotiable values and standards clearly. What won't you do for money? What behaviors won't you tolerate in yourself, regardless of circumstances? What commitments will you keep even when keeping them becomes difficult? Write these down explicitly because vague values are useless when you're facing pressure or temptation. Once you've defined your integrity boundaries, you defend them absolutely, even when it costs you in the short term. If you discover you made a mistake that no one else knows about, you proactively disclose it and fix it rather than hoping no one notices. If you're asked to do something that conflicts with your values, you decline politely but firmly, even if it means losing a client or opportunity. Each time you choose integrity over convenience, you make a deposit in your reputation that will pay compound interest for decades. The fourth component is competence communicated through consistent quality. Your reputation isn't just about being a good person who keeps promises, it's also about being genuinely good at what you do and demonstrating that quality consistently. Competence alone isn't enough because plenty of talented people have terrible reputations due to unreliability or poor integrity. But reliability and integrity without competence also limits your opportunities because people want to work with those who deliver excellent results, not just those who are nice and punctual. The combination of competence with the other reputation elements creates what I call the trust multiplier, where people not only believe you'll do what you say, but also believe the quality will exceed their expectations. Building a reputation for competence requires that you consistently deliver your best work regardless of the size or visibility of the project. Many people make the mistake of giving maximum effort only for big opportunities while doing mediocre work on smaller projects. This is short-sighted because you never know which small project will lead to major opportunities, and people judge your standards by your worst work, not your best. The person who receives your rushed, mediocre output on a small project assumes that's your actual capability level, and they never give you the chance to prove otherwise on a larger project. The alternative approach is to treat every single piece of work as a representation of your standards, doing the absolute best you can within the constraints you're given. This means a small project for a friend gets the same attention to detail as a large project for a major client, because both contribute to your reputation. Let me introduce you to the concept of reputation velocity, which is how quickly your reputation spreads through networks. Some people have strong reputations that spread slowly because they do good work quietly without many people knowing about it. Others have mediocre reputations that spread quickly because they're highly visible and well-connected. The ideal is combining strong reputation elements with strategic visibility so that your reputation spreads rapidly to people who could create opportunities for you. Reputation velocity is accelerated when you make it easy for people to share stories about you, when you create memorable moments that people naturally talk about, and when you connect with people who themselves are well connected and communicate frequently. The practical implementation of reputation velocity involves what I call strategic remarkable moments, which are instances where you exceed expectations so dramatically that people feel compelled to tell others about it. These don't need to be expensive or elaborate, they just need to be thoughtful and surprising. Maybe when you complete a project, you also provide a simple guide for the client on how to maintain or extend what you built, something they didn't ask for but that adds tremendous value. Maybe when someone in your network is facing a challenge, you spend an hour researching solutions and send them a detailed summary of options with your analysis, purely because you wanted to help. Maybe when you speak with someone, you follow up a week later checking on something they mentioned, showing you actually listened and cared. These remarkable moments create stories that people share, spreading your reputation far beyond your immediate interactions. Here's your 90-day reputation building plan that requires zero financial investment. Week 1 through 2, you're going to audit your current reputation by asking 5 to 10 people you've worked with for honest feedback about how you're perceived in terms of reliability, generosity, integrity, and competence. This takes courage because you might hear uncomfortable truths, but you need to know your starting point. Week 3 through 4, you're implementing the absolute promise tracking system and ensuring perfect follow-through on every commitment. Week 5 through 6, you're establishing your weekly generosity practice and looking for opportunities to help others without being asked. Week 7 through 8, you're clarifying your integrity boundaries and making one difficult choice that demonstrates your values. Week 9 through 10, you're reviewing your recent work and identifying where you can raise your quality standards. Week 11 through 12, you're creating at least 3 remarkable moments for people in your network and observing how those stories spread. By day 90, you'll have transformed your reputation from something that happens to you into something you deliberately cultivate. You'll notice that opportunities begin finding you rather than you always hunting for them. People will recommend you for projects and connections without you asking. Your name will come up in conversations you're not part of because others are sharing positive stories about their experiences with you. Most importantly, you'll have built an asset that appreciates perpetually and can never be taken from you. Your reputation is the ultimate zero capital investment that multiplies the value of every skill you develop and every relationship you build. Protect it absolutely and invest in it consistently. Chapter 8. Invest in your mental models, building frameworks that multiply decision quality. There's a pattern I've observed repeatedly that separates people who build wealth and opportunity from people who stay stuck despite working hard and having good intentions. It's not intelligence, education, or access to information, because we live in an era where brilliant people struggle while others with average intelligence thrive. The difference is the quality of mental models they use to make decisions, solve problems, and understand how the world actually works. Mental models are frameworks for thinking, lenses through which you interpret information and make choices. Two people can have access to the exact same information, but arrive at completely different conclusions and make vastly different decisions based on the mental models they're using. The person with better mental models consistently makes better decisions, which compounds into dramatically better outcomes over time. This is why investing in mental models might be the highest leverage investment you can make, because better thinking multiplies the return on everything else you do. Let me illustrate this with a concrete example that will make the power of mental models visceral. Imagine two people facing the same situation. They've been offered a job that pays 20% more than their current position, but requires relocating to a more expensive city, where their cost of living will increase by 15%. Person A uses a simple mental model that I'll call surface level comparison. They see that 20% salary increase minus 15% cost of living increase equals a 5% net gain, so they evaluate the decision primarily on that math. This mental model focuses on immediate, easily quantifiable factors and leads them to accept or reject the offer based primarily on the short-term financial calculation. Person B approaches the same decision using multiple mental models simultaneously. They apply second-order thinking, asking not just what happens if they take the job, but what happens after that and after that. They consider opportunity cost, concerned asking what they're giving up by the choosing this path versus alternative paths. They use the mental model of optionality, asking which choice creates more future options and flexibility. They apply the concept of reversibility, considering how difficult it would be to undo this decision if it doesn't work out. They think about network effects, evaluating whether the new city and company would accelerate their career growth through better connections and learning opportunities. They consider their personal growth trajectory, asking which environment would challenge them to develop faster. After applying all these mental models, person B might make the exact same decision as person A, or they might reach the opposite conclusion, but their decision quality is dramatically higher because they've considered factors and implications that person A never even thought about. Over a career of hundreds or thousands of decisions, the person with better mental models will consistently outperform the person without them, even if they have equal intelligence and work ethic. This is why investing time in learning and internalizing powerful mental models provides exponential returns. Every mental model you add to your toolkit improves every decision you make from that point forward, creating compound interest on your thinking quality. Now let's talk about specific mental models that provide the highest return and how to internalize them so they become automatic frameworks you apply without conscious effort. The first and perhaps most important mental model is second-order thinking, which Charlie Munger describes as asking, "And then what?" Most people think only about the immediate and direct consequences of their actions and decisions. Second-order thinking means you trace out the subsequent consequences that follow from the initial consequences, often revealing that what seems good initially leads to bad outcomes later, or what seems painful initially leads to excellent outcomes later. The practical application of second-order thinking transforms decision-making across every domain. When you're deciding whether to take on a client project, first-order thinking asks whether the payment is good and whether you can deliver the work. Second-order thinking asks what working with this client will lead to afterward. Will this project enhance your portfolio in ways that attract better future clients? Will this client potentially provide referrals or repeat business? Will the work help you develop valuable skills, or will it keep you stuck doing things you're trying to move beyond? Will this client respect your boundaries and processes, or will they train you to accept poor treatment that makes future client relationships more difficult? The decision might be completely different when you think through these second and third order consequences rather than just evaluating the immediate project. You internalize second order thinking by making it a conscious practice every time you face a decision for 90 days. Before making any significant choice, you force yourself to write down or speak aloud the chain of consequences. I do this, which leads to that, which leads to this other thing, which ultimately results in this outcome. Initially, this feels laborious and slow, but after 90 days of practice, second-order thinking becomes automatic. Your brain starts naturally tracing consequences without conscious effort, and you begin seeing implications that other people miss entirely. The second critical mental model is inversion, which means approaching problems backward by asking what would guarantee failure rather than what might create success. This model is powerful because it's often easier to identify what definitely won't work than what definitely will work, and by avoiding the paths to failure, you dramatically increase your odds of success. Inversion also reveals hidden obstacles and risks that forward thinking misses, because we're naturally optimistic about our plans and tend to overlook what could go wrong. Applying inversion into practice means that when you set a goal, you spend time explicitly identifying all the ways you could fail to achieve it. Then you systematically design your approach to avoid those failure modes. If your goal is to build a successful freelance business, instead of just planning what you'll do to succeed, you ask what would guarantee failure. The answers might include not having enough clients, working with clients who don't pay or pay too slowly, burning out from overwork, doing work you hate that drains your energy, failing to differentiate yourself from competitors, not building systems that allow you to scale, and damaging your reputation through poor quality or missed deadlines. Once you've identified these failure modes, you design your business approach specifically to avoid each one. You build a client acquisition system that ensures consistent pipeline. You establish payment terms that protect your cash flow. You set boundaries that prevent burnout. You focus on work you find energizing. You develop a clear positioning that differentiates you. You create systems and potentially hire help, and you maintain absolute standards for quality and reliability. By using inversion, you've created a more robust plan that accounts for risks that pure forward thinking would have missed. The third powerful mental model is opportunity cost, which recognizes that choosing any option means giving up all alternative options, and the true cost of a decision isn't just what you pay, but what you give up by not choosing the alternatives. Most people evaluate decisions in isolation, asking, "Is this good?" without asking, "Is this better than my alternatives?" This leads to choosing mediocre options simply because they're acceptable, while passing on great options because they didn't consider them as alternatives. Opportunity cost thinking transforms how you allocate your most valuable resource, time. When someone asks for an hour of your time, the question isn't just whether that hour would be valuable in isolation. The question is whether that hour with them is more valuable than the best alternative use of that hour. Maybe the alternative is working on your most important project, or spending time with family, or resting so you can perform better tomorrow, or learning a critical skill. When you explicitly consider opportunity cost, you become much more selective about how you spend time, because you realize that saying yes to anything means saying no to something else. You internalize opportunity cost thinking by practicing explicit alternative comparison for 30 days. Every time you're about to say yes to something, you pause and identify the 3 best alternative uses of that time, energy, or money. You write them down or state them clearly. Then you make your decision based on which option provides the most value. This practice feels awkward initially because it slows down decision-making, but it rapidly trains your brain to automatically consider alternatives before committing to anything. The fourth essential mental model is systems thinking, which recognizes that most interesting outcomes emerge from complex systems with multiple interacting components rather than from simple cause and effect relationships. Systems thinking helps you see feedback loops, unintended consequences, leverage points, and emergent behavior that linear thinking completely misses. This mental model is particularly valuable for understanding business, economics, personal productivity, and relationship dynamics because these are all complex systems where interventions in one area create ripple effects throughout the entire system. Applying systems thinking means that when you're trying to improve some outcome, you don't just focus on the most obvious direct intervention. Instead, you map out the entire system, identifying all the components that influence the outcome and how they interact with each other. If you're trying to improve your productivity, linear thinking might say you just need better time management techniques. Systems thinking recognizes that productivity emerges from the interaction of multiple factors: your energy levels throughout the day, the quality of your sleep, your nutrition, your work environment, the clarity of your priorities, your ability to say no to distractions, your emotional state, the quality of your tools and processes, and many other elements. Improving productivity might mean intervening in sleep or nutrition or environment rather than in time management directly, because those leverage points affect multiple other components of the system simultaneously. The fifth mental model that provides enormous returns is probabilistic thinking, which means reasoning in terms of likelihood and expected value rather than certainty and binary outcomes. Most people think in certainties that don't exist. This will definitely work. That definitely won't. I'm sure about this. Probabilistic thinking recognizes that almost everything involves uncertainty, and better decisions come from estimating probabilities and thinking through multiple scenarios rather than assuming a single outcome. This mental model helps you make better decisions under uncertainty, manage risk more effectively, and avoid the overconfidence that destroys plans and opportunities. Practicing probabilistic thinking means that whenever you're making predictions or plans, you assign rough probability estimates to different outcomes rather than assuming one outcome will definitely occur. If you're launching a product, instead of planning as if it will definitely succeed or definitely fail, you might estimate there's a 40% chance it performs better than expected, a 40% chance it performs about as expected, and a 20% chance it performs worse than expected. Then you plan for all three scenarios, ensuring you can capitalize on success, manage the expected case, and survive the disappointing case. This approach creates much more robust plans than assuming certainty in any direction.